the Americans always say to me, "How did you get this? How did you get? We can't find these HD Smith 660 screwdrivers, and I've got a full set."
All right, well, we are here with another episode of Duo Dive, and I am very excited to welcome Ben, the Tool Addict, on from Instagram. I've been following his account for a while, and it is just fabulous. He's got so much eye candy, and I'm excited for you guys to see that today. And of course, I'm joined by Patrick, the trusty HUCKSTER Mercantile, who has a wonderful account as well, so make sure you're following him. And he is my partner in Duo Dive, and one of the members of the Triptych team. So welcome, Patrick and Ben.
Thank you.
Hey, Katie. Thanks for having us again.
Wonderful.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. Showing some different items to the vintage crowd.
Well, this is going to be a great episode, and I'm going to let you go ahead and introduce yourself, Ben, because you have quite the little display there laid out for us.
Well, yeah, so my name's Ben, and I started collecting tools in the lockdown. So another one of those lockdown collections, which have started. I'm sure there's plenty of people. So believe it or not, I didn't have really any collectible tools or old vintage items really a year and a half ago. So I've been very busy on the internet lockdown, searching. First, it was YouTube. I met a lot of collectors through that, and then Instagram, and then Facebook groups. So I wasn't on any social media a year and a half ago either, not any Facebook or anything. And now I'm addicted to it. It's like, you never know what you're going to miss out on. So I started collecting Vises. So, Vises was my Vise. And then I started collecting wrenches, different types and different mechanisms, and they're quite collectible amongst a certain, mostly male crowd. And then recently, with watching and looking at Instagram, I've broadened my horizons to basically collecting anything I see. So I've got a little bit of everything, and I think
that's a little dangerous.
Yeah, I know. It's terrible. So I think that's how you discovered me. Was I put pictures of random items in, it's called, I think, flat lay, where you lay the items out in a decorative or an odd manner, and then people can obviously, it's an image, people can like it. And I started doing that for fun, and I find it quite relaxing to lay out unusual items and lay out unusual items and make a picture. And there's definitely people appreciate it, because I did get to 10,000 subscribers, but I recently lost my original account because I clicked on a link, because I wasn't really aware of the dangers of links. So I have to start again. But yeah, I'll still continue to post pictures when I'm in the mood. Sometimes I put 5 or 10 up when I'm in the mood. So that's pretty much it with me.
Find you on, Ben?
Well, at first I started making videos. So I have a small YouTube channel, which is basically me showing what I've recently bought. And I usually tell people how much I paid. So I do a quick video very similar to this, where I'm showing items which I've recently picked up. Like today, I picked up some items from a, let me show you, from a antique fair. So I bought this oil can and some other items. And when I get enough of them to make a video, then I will make a quick video on YouTube. And obviously on Instagram, I post pictures. And I also run a small group on Facebook for other tool collectors to post their collections as well.
Fabulous. So guys, I will link all of Ben's information down below. Make sure you go follow him, because even if you're not interested in tools in general, his flat lays are particularly interesting. And I love all that vintage eye candy. So you can't beat some of the stuff that he has. So Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about what you're showing us now on screen? Because there are a lot of wrenches and things that even I, as someone that likes tools, really don't know what they are.
Yeah, so these are back in the sort of 1860s to sort of 1900. There was lots of attempts to reinvent the wheel over and over again. And these are some of the failed attempts. The reason why you've not seen them is because they're impractical. They're very inefficient, difficult to manufacture, and they just didn't make it. I mean, obviously, everybody will know something like this, which is what actually won the war, if you know what I mean. The design with the thumb wheel in the middle, which everyone should have one or two of these if they're homeowners somewhere knocking around. But this is what happened before they came to that solution, where they were trying to, they were based purely on quality. So they didn't really do it on they were just trying to, a new gimmick. It was gimmicks and and engineering. So I'll show you a few of the items. I've got about 800 adjustable spanners, believe it or not.
Wow.
I know, I'm mentally ill. So
wait, 800 in the last year and a half? You said you didn't have any of these before the lockdown started?
No, not one.
Wow.
That is
I've been busy.
collection.
Yeah, I'm mentally ill. I'm diseased. So
the collector's bug has bit you, Ben.
Well, I've always been a collector. I've had 40 or 50 bonsai trees. I've had many. I used to collect jewelry. So I've collected lots of things, but wrenches and tools is my latest obsession. And unlike the bonsai trees, you can't kill them. So
that's a good thing.
That's a bonus.
A hot summer can half your collection if you're in the bonsai world and you're not watering it 5 times a day. So, but yeah, so I'll show you a few of these. So this is a Lucas wrench, and this is a British company. And these were founded in about the 1860s. And what they did is they always came out with a different gimmick. So as you open the wrench, it actually opens a screwdriver out the bottom. I mean, I'm not sure how useful, but it was a gimmick they came out with where they had a screwdriver popping out, and they were one of the first to ever have a retractable screwdriver. I'm not sure how much you would need that, but and then here. This is a French version of a similar sort of wrench, and this one has the screwdriver pops out with a pin. So same principle, but a different mechanism, which is kind of fun. I'm not sure which one you prefer.
Now, how do you go about finding these? Because these seem very specific and not something that just every tool collector has.
No, they're very, very rare. And it takes a very high tolerance for wasting time, if you know what I mean. For instance, this is a cam spanner, and this was made around 1875 to 1880, and they made 100 of these. And there was only 100 ever made, and it's a Walker's patent. So you imagine how thin and fragile that is. So how many of these ended up in buckets or got thrown away? So there's probably only 10 of these in existence. So with a lot of these, there's, for instance, this is called a hold-fast wrench. I've only, in all the collections, and I know during collecting these items, I've come in contact with lots of large collectors who have been collecting for 60 years plus, who are in their 80s, and they have 10,000 different adjustable wrenches. And all my contacts, maybe there's 3 of these or 4 of these known in existence. And what was unique about this one was the wedge design, which obviously you can adjust to adjust the size of the screw. Kind of neat, but easily damaged, and not many survived. And this is a very early patent, over 145 years old. Do you guys have Singer sewing machines?
Yes.
Over in the
Yes.
US?
I have one right behind me.
Well, this Singer sewing machine was from the early 1800s, and this was the wrench what you could buy for the Singer sewing machine. And this is the Singer sewing. You see there, Singer and Company. So this wrench is obviously specifically designed for the two nuts which came on the Singer sewing machine to adjust it.
I find that interesting. There's an open-ended side and a closed-ended side.
Yeah, and I don't know quite how it works because I don't have the sewing machine to demonstrate, but you can get the idea that obviously there was something what that fitted, and obviously it must be like just over a 1/4 inch or 5/8 sort of nut on the other side. But it's from 1860 this wrench, and it's this is not the rarest wrench in the world. I've seen maybe 4 of them because obviously they made a lot of sewing machines, but I'm not sure how many wrenches survived. Most of them got slung, you know what I mean, a long time ago.
Now, for something like that, for the Singer one, it's fairly common to come across the little tools and the accessories that a person would get with the actual sewing machine. That would have been more for the repairman. Like this would have been if you're going to open up your machine, or would that have been something that would have gone to the lady of the house as she had her sewing machine?
Well, I would have thought that wouldn't have come with the sewing machine as like part of the machine. This probably would have gone to a factory for repairing the machines, or you know, because people didn't usually in the 1860s have their own machine at home. Generally, there were small workshops. So I would imagine that would be a workshop tool, probably sold extra to you know, so not everyone would have bought one.
I'm going to start paying more attention to those little accessory boxes that I come across.
Usually
well, I mean, you let me know if you do see one, but
that's fantastic.
3, so they're quite unusual. And I quite like things which are a little bit different, like this wrench here. I mean, it's kind of fun design. If you open it out, there's a screwdriver when you take it apart. Obviously, it's a wrench and it's a nail puller. It's a hammer, and it's kind of impractical. They made this in many different sizes, and this is a Broadman's patent, and this is an American wrench, and they made this from about the 1850s, 1860s, very, very early model, and they made this for a lot of these. These are reasonably common, not in this size, in the next size up. They must have made 500,000 of these because you do see them regularly, even in England. But what I like specifically about the tools is the engineering. This one is made by Billings and Spencer. I don't know if you can see. It's quite a recent one, 1894, and it's a Lowe's patent. And it's probably one of the most over-engineered spanners. So basically, you can adjust the spanner or the wrench to open it up for the nut, and you've got the size marked on the wrench. And then when you close down on the wrench, it will tighten on the nut, so you cannot round the nut. But the engineering of you imagine this is 130 years ago. The engineering to the machining to make this. I mean, I can show you wrenches made at the exact same time in Europe, and they're like absolutely nothing compared to the engineering involved with such an item, if you know what I mean. So, and it even tidies away. I mean, that's 1894, and if I look briefly behind me, I can find something like this. This was made after this. You know what I mean? Wow. Very basic. And there's lots of examples. I'm trying to find one. Obviously, I can't. So, for instance, this one's got the patent on it. So you see how crude it is? This one is 1897. So you can 3 years earlier. And you can see one is cast, it's bent, it's, you know, and the other is machined. And with wrenches, you don't often get very exquisite ones, because unlike carpentry, where they made like Chippendale furniture, they had fine tools from a very long time ago, you know. But with the wrenches, they only really had the motorized engine for maybe 100 years. So before that, it was just a horse and a cart. So you just needed one big wedged hammer, usually made by the blacksmith in the village, if you know what I mean. So it's kind of unusual to find really well-engineered items in wrenches, because they're kind of throwaway items for the most part.
Now, the piece that you just showed, that you were saying the over-engineered piece had a Lowe's patent on it, but you mentioned who made it, and the name wasn't Lowe's. So what
No,
is
Billings? The manufacturer is Billings and Spencer. He made 3 or 4 variants of this design. Billings and Spencer is an American company, and they are one of my favorite company. The Lowe's patent is the chap who actually invented the patent for it. And what you'll find with a lot of companies, like Stanley, for instance, the Stanley Tool Company, is when somebody invented a patent, they would just buy the company and rebrand the item. So most Stanley tools, maybe 99% of them, are just companies what they've purchased and then rebranded the tools as Stanley. So you can find the same tools, unbranded Stanley from the same, you know what I mean? So it can vary quite a lot, but Billings and Spencer is a fine company and had hundreds of tools of the highest quality. It was one of America's leading companies.
So they would typically do that in the case. So in that case, Lowe's was the one who actually applied for the patent. You had another
Usually
name
the case,
on
yeah.
the one
So
next
usually
to it.
it's applied by Lowe's, and then it will have been bought, or that it will be a person who works for that company, because patents are usually applied in the name of the person who invented it, but it's obviously owned by Billings and Spencer. I've not seen this wrench unbranded Billings and Spencer. This is that company's product. But it was the Wild West in the old days, and everything was, shall we say, it's not like it is nowadays, where people had rights.
But then to compare it, though, you showed that a larger version from 1897. That one just said patent. So that one, if it doesn't have another name, then that presumably was
if you search
applied by the manufacturer.
Obviously it's a very lower grade tool and more agricultural, and if you search the patent, it will have all the information. They were proud of this wrench because of the engineering and what it took to make it. So because of that, they put their information on it. With the lower grade items, quite often there's very little information, and they're just unbranded completely because they're not they're not bragging rights. They're just practical tools made at the time.
And who were they marketing those practical tools to? Were they more of the everyday handyman that didn't want to spend a lot of money, or contractors, or what was the deal there?
Well, I think with the earlier wrenches, there wasn't really cars in great numbers. So they were really for they were only just starting to invent bolts and nuts and standardization, and so it was early days. So it was very there wasn't a lot of it in there wasn't, people were still using nails, and things were they weren't built up like they are now. So when you find a tool like this, they registered only making 100, so you wouldn't find them in great numbers because there wasn't many applications you could use this for at the time. Most things were made out of wood. They used nails. At that time, it was not that much engineering going on. Like nowadays, obviously, you find lots of things you could use these for, if you understand, in them, like an IKEA flat pack furniture with the nuts and the bolts and the hammers and the screws. You wouldn't have that many opportunities. So like working on your Singer sewing machine might be one of the only things you could possibly use something like this for, if that makes sense.
Now that over-engineered wrench that you showed, that's just amazing.
It really is. It's very, for the time period, it's quite amazing.
Would you consider that a pipe wrench, or did it have a different name back in its time?
Well, in England, we associate a pipe wrench has corrugated jaws. So the jaws would have teeth to grip the pipe. So they would open the jaw and grip the pipe. But if it has parallel jaws, in England, we call it a spanner. But in America, you both call them wrenches. So but in England, we call it a spanner if it's parallel, and a wrench if it's corrugated for gripping round stock rather than square things. So shall I show you? So this is kind of an interesting wrench. This is another American Hawes wrench, and what's kind of unusual about it is everything's adjustable. So it has detents, so you can adjust the detent, and you can pull out, and you can adjust the different, you know, trying to figure out. Oh, there we go. How it actually works. Kind of impractical. I'm not sure what the benefit of that would be, to be able to adjust it so much, but that's the reason why not many survive. So these can fetch from $800 to $1,200, which is kind of amazing, really, isn't it, for one tool?
And is there a big market for some of these more specific wrenches?
No, but there's not a lot of them. So kind of, they always kind of fetch the value, because in the US, you've got a wrenching group with maybe, I don't know, what have you got? Maybe 48 states represented. And each state has 2 or 3 big collectors on average. So you have maybe a couple of hundred people who are very big on these items and will pay that kind of money. But in the UK, we only have maybe 3 or 4 collectors of that level, because we're effectively like one state in the US.
So would you say that you've kind of cornered the market in your area?
No,
tools?
I have a 800, and there's a chap called Ron who wrote a book on adjustable spanners. I'm good friends with him, and I've supplied many of the wrenches. I'll show you the book. Many of the wrenches in his next book. Some of them are mine because he doesn't have them. So you'll find the different wrenches and the different sizes, and some of them are from the US and some of them are from the UK, if that makes sense.
It does.
So there's the cam spanner, the one which I just showed you. 1893 is the patent on it, but some of them are 1861, and it varies depending on the tool itself. So this chap who wrote this book, if anyone's interested, that's the book. And he wrote this book basically in isolation. He didn't really know there were so many collectors. And obviously when he wrote this book, a lot of them have come and met, you know, have been doing the same hobby, kind of parallel for a long time. And so now there's a bit of a community, but he has about 5,000 or 10,000 different adjustable spanners. It's surprising how many patents there was for one simple tool.
Now, how do you trace those patents down? Can you research them online?
Yeah, well, in the US, it's free, and you can search the patents, and they have all the information. In the UK, it's very difficult, and you have to buy the patent. You have to go to the library, and you have to pay to get it. So Ron, who wrote this book, he was telling me he had to pay quite a lot of money to buy the information to put it in the book. But in the US, yeah, most of these tools, you can find them patented, and it's free to discover. I don't personally search them because I'm too busy looking to buy more. I haven't got the time.
I did just do a little digging and confirmed that book is available. I'm sure from many places, but it is available from Amazon here in the United States.
Oh, yeah, it's the biggest selling wrench book. There's not many of them, though, to be fair. So, like, it's just the impracticality of the tools. Like, this is a Hawes. They call it a Baxter Wrench. There you go. You can see there Baxter on it, and it opens like a screw. It's got a very limited, and that side might have, say, I don't know, 1/4 inch to 5/8, and that side, and it goes up in sizes, maybe to the bigger sizes, which are like this, which you can adjust, and you might get, I know, a 2 inch or 1 3/4 inches. And you think a modern day spanner now, which you can buy for $10, will do all of those sizes in one tool, and you'd have to have 5 of these with double-ended, so 10 wrenches just for the one tool. And it shows you how they thought this would be practical and a good design, but very, very early, though, 150 years ago. And this one's quite a fun one, the way it adjusts with a screw, so you can adjust the jaw just with a thumb, and it actually it's quite a good design. I don't know why something similar isn't, more popular.
That's a great design.
It is, and it's got brass, which always helps, doesn't it?
Now that tool right there that you just showed, in the States, we would consider that basically an adjustable wrench or a crescent wrench. And I'm curious.
A crescent wrench, yeah. Crescent style adjustable wrench.
So
But
was
this
it
one
the
is
Crescent?
wrench.
Okay. Was it the Crescent company that actually invented the patent or the design of Crescent wrenches, or did they buy a patent
No, no,
from somebody
it's not.
else?
It's the current Crescent style adjustable wrench where the thumb wheel is in the center and it adjusts like the common, born out standard tool. There was two companies who invented that design. There was the Baco tool company, which I have a huge collection of Baco tools. And then there was a company called Clyburn, and they basically invented it. That they put their patent in within a couple of weeks of each other. It was a race to patent that design. But there's many other designs previous to that. But the Crescent style with the adjustable thumb wheel with the moving jaw was patented in about 1884 by Baco Tool Company, which is a Swedish company, and Clyburn Company. And they actually got together for 10 years because basically they tried to, conquer each other's markets, and they actually got together and manufactured a tool together. So it was the Baco Clyburn spanner, which is this spanner. And this style of spanner was the one what born out and actually won the war, if you know what I mean.
That is fascinating. That makes so much sense. Even Louie's enjoying your wrench display.
Well, I'm not so sure about that, but I can show you the very first patented spanner what was ever made. Just hang on a second. So this is Baco's first ever design. You see there, and this one is forged by hand and then machined. And this one is basically from 1884, and this is the first adjustable wrench which you would recognize as a wrench of today.
That is amazing. Now, you said that one's machined. What era did they start actually making these more in bulk, probably using a more manufactured process?
In the 1920s, it depends, because even though Baco invented this design slightly before Crescent, in the US, they were machining and manufacturing. Their industrial revolution was much more in progress a bit earlier. So I would say the 1920s, we were starting to really mass produce tools, which is from the era I just showed you with the Baco Clyburn. And then obviously, but in the US, it was a bit earlier because I think they were a bit more developed.
That is so interesting. Man, you have quite the collection there.
It is amazing.
So I've showed you a few wrenches. Would you like me to show you maybe something else, maybe padlocks, or what do you think? Or
I think padlocks would be fascinating.
That'd be great.
So I will quickly show you some padlocks, and you can take a look at some different designs of padlocks, and I'll be back in a moment.
Fantastic. Stay tuned, folks. All right, folks, we are back, and man, look at this display. All of these padlocks, some of which I've never seen before. And Patrick, you were saying you thought they were something out of Harry Potter?
Well, that one in the upper corner, I wouldn't even know that was a padlock. That just looked like something that should be at Hogwarts.
It's totally unique. So Ben, you just started collecting these 3 weeks ago, is that right?
Well, kind of, yes. I basically had two padlocks, which I bought from an antique fair, and I posted both of the padlocks on a padlock group, and it turned out that one of them was Tudor from about 1450 to 1550, and I had a lot of collectors wanting them to buy it. So I said, I don't really sell any tools. So I met a lovely chap from Switzerland who gave me a bunch of unusual ones in return for the one. And the one which he swapped was a bit smaller than that.
Wow.
So obviously it was rare, but I don't know. So I was happy because these are better for me making photography and pictures. Is better for me rather than the one tiny rare one. It was quite an unusual padlock because it was actually working. It was found by a metal detectorist. and usually the center cylinders rot out, so you can't undo them. And this one was picked, and actually you could open it, and it was, exceptionally rare British padlock. So it was definitely found the right home, if you know what I mean.
And that's always the wonderful thing about collecting, is you can meet other collectors and trade and really know that the things that you're trading or you're finding is going into the right home.
And that's what these shows, what we hope these shows will be, is to educate people when they come across something. Oh, wait, I think I've seen that before. Or how do I recognize something that's older or reproduction or whatever? And these are definitely some shapes that, again, at a glance, I wouldn't even know that they were padlocks.
Yeah, they're kind of unusual. And I was quite surprised when I got these. They're kind of unusual. So some of the mechanisms, they were quite inventive back in, some of these are from the 1800s, and they're quite inventive the way they work. They're kind of unusual. The other padlock which I got with the Tudor one was this one, and this one was made in 1840, I think, and it's called a tag padlock. And what's really interesting about this one is the chap who traveled and where he traveled on the train. So inside here you can unlock the padlock, which opens it, and you can slide out, and you have here a piece of polished bone as the glass to stop the tag getting wet.
Amazing.
And this is from the 1840s, and inside you can see where he's been traveling to. So it's Mr. Barrett, and he's been to all sorts of places. He's been to London, and look at the way how he's written London in 1860. He's been to all sorts of places in the UK: Chelmsford, Sandwich. These are all British towns, usually close to railway stations, and this would have been a railway luggage. But he's been all over, Mr. Barrett, and it's kind of cool that the tags are still in place with the padlock and where he's been.
So would this literally have been a lock on the luggage that would have then been gone to the baggage car, so they knew when to pull it off? So he went to London, he went to Sandwich.
So no, he wouldn't have manually manhandled his luggage. He would have had a porter to do that for him. So on the tag would have his name. So obviously he could be relocated with his bag, and he'd stop anybody obviously going into his bag with having his information. So it's not high security, but it's obviously, it's kind of interesting, the history that, Mr. Barrett was traveling around England in 150 years plus ago, and writing his little tag out, so they know where to get him. So obviously they need to get his bag off here, because that's where he's going. So he would have wrote one of these out every journey to say Barrett case, and then obviously he was going to London, so they would have got his bags off at Houston.
That polished bone cover is also amazing. I think I now need to find one of those.
Well,
I think you do too, Patrick.
I can only find one, which is a Google image, and it's not the same. They're exceptionally rare, as the price tag of what I paid for it. So that's like $450.
Is there anything written on the lock itself, a patent number, a manufacturer?
Yeah, I can't really read it, but it is on there. But in this,
is that what's along the edges?
Yeah, it says something. It says Thomas. I don't know if you can read that. Thomas, is it Morris or something?
Yes.
Manchester. And then obviously, because obviously it says 1860, but it's 1840s. And I think that's possibly the patent number. It's kind of difficult. Registered. I don't know. It's kind of difficult for my old eyes to see it. But yeah, kind of a cool item. And there is a tag somewhere, but I can't find it where it has that information written in print on it. But I mean, definitely, someone of the higher status in life would have had a padlock like this in, 1840s, 1850s.
Now, obviously, when you're dealing with something like that, I mean, to me, a 300-pound price is actually not expensive at all. but
No,
it came with
I
the key.
yeah, it's not too bad.
How
Yeah,
expensive is the key compared to just if you found the lock and it did not have the key? What would you expect to pay?
Well, I would imagine it would probably you could have one made, but so you could have one easily made because these locks were extremely pickable. So you probably for £100 or £50 have one made, or have one adapted, an old key file to fit. The fact a padlock works has a huge value, a different value, especially the earlier examples. And if they have the key, or for instance, this one is quite corroded on the cast iron, cast steel, hook. But yeah, it has a massive, obviously you guys will know the condition. But when you get to the mega rare items, it's just, you got to get them when you can get them. I have no idea of the value of these different mechanisms. And he briefly told me the value, but I forgot because it's not my expertise, but I just thought it'd be interesting to show some of the designs. This one, you think it's a key, but it's like a screw, and you have to keep screwing it and screwing it and screwing it to actually open the padlock. And it's inside, it's kind of different, the way it's made. I believe it's French from the mid 1800s, and then that padlock there is locked, and then to unlock it you have to screw it all the way in. You can see it's a threaded screw. Just mental, some of the designs, and some of the padlocks are huge. I mean, their keys are absolutely monstrous, like 2 foot long, for like churches and cathedrals and stuff. But it's kind of amazing, don't you think, a padlock so big?
So these bigger padlocks would have gone on buildings, not so much
Yeah,
personal.
it would have gone on lockups like yards, buildings, cathedrals, things which obviously doors were bigger then, locks were bigger. I don't think it's necessarily very secure, certainly not for modern standards, but it was the early days.
Now, that big padlock you just showed, what does the little pin do that's coming out of the bottom?
It's just to encapsulate so you don't lose the hook. So obviously you can't lose it because it's pinned in, if you know what I mean. Which is a good idea, really, for idiot-proof things.
And the little padlocks, the tiny one that you showed, what kind of item would have that locked up?
That would have probably locked up, some sort of travel bag, or possibly, even something like, like a diary or something. This is French from about the 1800s, and they're quite common, these in France. They're not high dollar, $100 should buy you one of these or something similar, and they're quite sweet. Like for instance, this one has the code. It's been deciphered. So it's usually a 3-digit. They have them in different tumbles. You can get them like six tumbles or as low as 2. Obviously, the more wheels on it, the more expensive the item, because they were more expensive to buy. Therefore, there's less of them, and they were more likely to break because they're more complicated inside the mechanism.
I see. And like you said, I'm sure a lot of these got rusted over the years. Which makes me wonder, when you're out at an antique mall or a fair or wherever you would buy one of these, how, if they don't have the key, do you test to make sure the mechanism's working?
Well, I think you can get them, obviously, keys made, but you would only do that on the ultra rare collectible lock, which is, and you'd have to be a specialist, because you don't need a padlock to enjoy them and to use them for photography. And you don't need a padlock, because you're going to use them on an outbuilding, because they're not, brass is quite easy to cut through. So I think nowadays they're just appreciated for the aesthetic value rather than the security value of them.
They're beautiful, and I love all the different shapes and sizes.
So what would you like to see a few items next? Maybe my collection of legs, or collection of multi-tools or something?
I think the legs would be fascinating.
Right. Well, I'll show you those. And I've only been collecting legs for about 2.5 months since I saw a post of somebody with a fabulous collection. So he's getting there. So shall we do that then?
Absolutely.
Sure.
And folks, when you see this leg collection, it is not what you're thinking, and you are going to be blown away. So stay tuned. All right, guys, we are back. And as I mentioned, well, the legs are pretty spectacular. And these aren't your average leg items or collectibles. So I am really interested to learn what these are because there's so many different shapes and designs.
Right. So I saw a post possibly maybe 2-3 months ago of a chap who had a huge collection, much more diverse and interesting as mine, because I've only been collecting a short period. And I just thought, wow, how interesting. He had leg corkscrews and leg bottle openers and all sorts of items. So I thought, now I know what I'm going to be setting my mind to next. So I've been collecting a little bit. I found a few. They're not so common, so they're difficult to find. And then a friend has made me a whole bunch of them as well. So, to sort of boost the collection without the hunt, if you know what I mean. They are basically leg-themed items. The most common are these machinist leg calipers. Machinists would make these in shop, obviously for inside and outside inside calipers, just for obviously for working on a lathe or whatever. And these are quite common, and they were made in all sorts of different shapes. This one is like the ones what my friend made, and sometimes they have a caliper on the outside and an inside on the way they did it, sometimes it's arms, sometimes it's legs, sometimes it's two ladies, and I just find them fascinating. I don't know why.
Now, what era are we talking about with some of these pieces?
Well, this piece I bought in the US, and it was from Brown's auction, and I think it was put around the 1850s to 1870s, something around there. But then these are maybe 2 weeks old, so quite a variation. But generally, the 50s or the 30s or whenever it was. Like, for instance, this one is a little bottle opener by Schnaps. So how would you date that? Turn of the century, 1920s? I don't know. But it's a little, obviously, advertising piece. And you've got the little bottle opener just there to pop the lid off the Coke or whatever. And then you have...
Coca-Cola made some of those as well.
Yeah, I've seen a few. I've only come across the one because I'm in the UK. We have a smaller market, so it's quite difficult to find things. Like here, this is a shoe. Kind of falls into the same shit, and it's a penknife. And then I have a leg penknife. These are usually what I find is German. I don't know why, but the Germans were liking the legs. And
now,
then
that term is very interesting, penknife. Usually we would just consider that a pocket knife. So can you explain a little bit more about that term?
I think it's the exact same term. It's just a way of describing a small pen-like item, pen knife, because they're small.
Gotcha.
So it's just to say small pocket knife, pen knife. It's the same term. We use both terms in the UK.
I did a quick little search for the Schweppes bottle opener, and I actually found one currently listed as of the time we're recording this on eBay for $45.
Wow.
Yeah, that sounds okay, doesn't it? I mean, I paid £20, which is about $28 for this. So similar. I don't think there's a big market for them. Is that buy it now, or is that got an offer as well?
That one is buy it now, and it looks like there might be some damage. There's something at the heel that I'm not sure if it's been repaired, but
well,
it's interesting,
bargain.
That because also I know Cadbury Schweppes used to own also Dr. Pepper, which is near and dear to my heart. So that is a UK company. So I'm not curious when those due date, if they were British made or if that was an American made, like you said with Coca-Cola, Katie.
That is kind of interesting.
Kind of a throwaway item, so they don't manufacture them and put patents. They just it'd be hard to find out that out, I would have thought.
Right, but I agree with your estimate, just from the shape of the boot, that late, by probably just after the turn of the century.
Yeah, something like that. I mean, they vary in scale. I mean, this one is probably more modern, and this is obviously for a shoehorn for taking the shoe off. But you do find these very early examples. This is probably someone's knocked it up. These are kind of interesting. This is a seal. So I don't know if you can see, it's a seal with someone's name. So you'd have the envelope and you could, so it's bronze, probably 1880, something like that. Quite detailed, actually. It's quite well made. And obviously you can seal your letters. And then this one is called a pipe tamperer. So you would compress your tobacco inside the pipe before burning. And this was just designed for that purpose. And so is this one. So this is a pipe tamperer, but slightly different with being a seal for envelopes. But yeah, it's kind of interesting how many items were incorporate one theme. And I find that quite fun to try to find items, with that, different themes, if you know what I mean.
I like the themes, and they make a great flat lay photograph. They're quite interesting.
Yeah, I think so too. They're quite stylish, aren't they, some of the designs?
Those big shoes that are there, they're flat and they appear to be bronze. What were those used for?
These were bookends. So you find them quite common, and they have a little bit of something stuck. And you find I've got different shapes, and they're usually bookends. So they're sat on a piece of brass. The book stops it going over. That would be your display side for the bookend. But I prefer the undisplay side because I think it looks a little bit more older. This probably quite recent, maybe, I don't know, maybe 1920s or 1950s. I have no idea. But obviously,
I love your definition of recent.
Yeah.
Well, some of my tools are from the 1500s, like old wooden planes and stuff. So,
well, it is a question related to that. Is you mentioned some of the pieces here in this collection are brand new, basically reproductions of this brand new creation. Do you have a target era? Or is it just what catches your eye?
It just what catches my eye. I mean, I met this chap who made me these on my Facebook group, and he made me a bunch of items. He made me this miniature brass handsaw. He made me 3 or 4 of these different shapes, and his name was Seth, and he was a very skilled craftsman, and he was out of work in between jobs. So he said he had time. So I said, could you make me a miniature handsaw with brass and steel? And he made that in a day. And next day that picture appeared. I said, boy, can you make me some more? So he made me a bunch of them. And then I said, oh, leg calipers. Could you make me something similar to this? And he just made me about 8 of them in 2 days. He made some out of steel, out of an old saw, which he cut up, and some out of brass sheet, which was from, I think, Home Depot or somewhere, brand new. And he's aged them so they have a slight look of patina. And, they're quite hard to find. So it was kind of nice to get some, different sizes and shapes. And they're great, and it's kind of like, in 100 years, they'll be an antique, just like these ones.
That's a great friend to have.
What a skilled craftsman you have. Now, as we're getting near the end of the show, I would love to see your collection of Plum Bobs, and then maybe you can take us around a quick tour of the shop.
Certainly, I'll do that now. I'll grab some Plum Bobs, and you can take a look.
Fantastic. So, folks, we'll be right back with you. Well, we are back with the Plum Bobs, and a lot of you guys are probably wondering what a Plum Bob is if you're not in the woodworking or carpentry realm. So, Ben, can you explain a little bit about Plum Bobs for our audience?
Well, it really only is a little bit because it's quite simple. So a Plum Bob is a heavy material. They're always solid. Sometimes they're not solid brass. They're actually weighted. And sometimes they have lead poured in them. This one's solid brass because it's a smaller one. And this one's got lead filled inside. And you would take the lid off and you would insert a piece of string through the lid. You would tie a knot and then you would put the lid back and it would be suspended on a long piece of string. Then obviously the weight, once it stays still, you would have exactly one vertical line which was completely straight. And obviously gravity and a point was very accurate. This was before, obviously, nowadays we use lasers, and before that you would use a spirit level with a bubble. But this is the only way you could get a vertical line really accurately was using gravity. And they're obviously different sizes, and each one is in ounces. So some are 4 ounce, 6 ounce, 32 ounce. This one in the middle is probably a particularly interesting one, because this one actually weighs 5 pounds, and it's called a shipwright plumb bob. And this is turn of the century, 1820s. And this was actually made for shipwrights, so building ships out of timber. So it was obviously when men were made out of steel and ships were made out of wood. And now obviously men are made out of wood and ships are made out of steel. You know, it was the good old days. And this would have been obviously an engineer's plumb bob. It would have been kept in a case for the engineer to check to see if things are true and they're square and they're correct. And it's kind of heavy. It's hard even picking it up for that long with my little arms. Obviously, most people will be aware of a spirit level with the bubble in the center. And this is obviously the same thing, but for, vertical lines to see. And they're always correct because gravity never lies. And they still work well today. And obviously, this would be a string which you would obviously wind down, and as it pulls tight. That's why you have different weights. So the ones which were used indoors for carpentry are usually smaller. And the ones which are bigger, you're generally outside for the wind. The bigger the weight, the more difficult it is the piece of string is going to move, if that makes sense.
Well, it is one of the questions I wanted to ask, because I understood the concept of a plumb bob, but I did not realize they would come purposely in different weights. So like you said, it's just gravity. So why would you need a heavier one versus a lighter one?
For the wind.
Oh, okay.
And some of them are more, if you see, they're more to a point than others. Some are more accurate. But basically, each one, this one's from New York, and they all have the sizes on. Every plumb bob will have the ounce weight on it, on each size. So usually, you see, this is a 6 1/4 ounces. And then obviously some of them, this one is a 1 ounce. I don't know if you can see it. And they came in different sizes, and obviously they for different jobs, because obviously some jobs you needed a longer piece of string and you needed a heavier weight. But they're kind of fun to look at, and some of them have had very hard lives banging around in the wind, and others haven't. This one's a 5 ounce plumb bob. But yeah, I just think they've got an interesting look to them. I mean, I don't specifically go out and seek them, but if I see them, I will pick them up at yard sales or flea markets, or you know what I mean. But I don't specifically look for them because they're not uncommon to find.
Now, you said that most of them are not uncommon, but are there any rare ones that have a specific date or patent manufacturer?
Oh my God. Any subject from there's some things which are exquisite. Some of them are ivory, and some of them are silver. Some of them are, there's some exquisite, 17th century, 18th century. Whenever you had the finest craftsmen making something, they quite often made their own tools, carved their own tools, and they made, and there was fine tools to go along with the fine workmanship, if that makes sense.
That makes so much sense.
So much sense. So what you find is things become very elaborate when craftsmen start messing around, when they've got too much time. I think when the wife says, "Come to bed," they start dwelling on things. Like, for instance, this plane is a model of an early English mitre plane, and the chap who made this is in his 80s. Now, this is how they used to come, where they were mitered. You see, the brass is mitered together, and you can't see the mitres. And this sort of detailing is completely unnecessary. But you can see it adds a lot of, attraction. Like, you wouldn't necessarily need to inlay ebony into brass. It doesn't affect the bubble, does it? But obviously, people, they just, they embellish tools in the old days like you wouldn't believe. And like, for instance, a simple drill, they would, inlay ivory in the end of the drill, and they would, use the finest timbers. This is ebony and brass, and the quality of it's hard to express how well it works, but it's just a drill. It's quite kind of amazing. This drill's kind of unique because it was made for Her Majesty, which is Queen Victoria, and it was only made for 2 years. It was made from 1853, I think, to 1855, and it's called the Ultimate Brace. They said that the brace couldn't become finer, if you know what I mean, with the materials and quality. And that's what you find with old things, is that the quality quite often exceeds, anything, what's necessary.
I totally agree. That quality is just not in items today like they were back in the day. There was a pride and a craftsmanship and a real quality there that's pretty amazing. I find that old things sometimes are just better and they work better. So as we are closing out the show here, folks, I want Ben to show a little tour of his shop, because it is amazing the things that he has in some of the displays, and they are very much something that I would love to add to my collection as well, because we both share a love for all of that amazing advertising and store displays.
Certainly. Well, I will show you a few of my items, and you can have a look in some of my drawers. And I'm not sure how rude that sounds, but in the US.
I think that's just fine, Ben. So we are going to take a look, folks, at Ben's shop, and we'll be back with you in just a second. All right, guys, we are back, and here is Ben's shop. Now, this is a pretty amazing and impressive display. So, Ben, why don't you show us around?
So I wouldn't say it's amazing or impressive, but it's certainly a small garage, quite full. So obviously, I started collecting Vises and other retro-y items. So, for instance, this is a extremely rare little Vise. Only about 3 of those known. This is a sort of a steam engine, a steam boiler and steam engine. These are kind of funky. These were from the RAF, so basically UK forces, and they have a magnet. They stick to the floor, they stick to the bench, and then they're adjustable. So obviously people could, just flick the knob and they can adjust it for work. And those were Air Ministry and RAF for the war effort. They're quite sought after because they're quite a clever design they came up with for the factories for obviously small parts. And then obviously here we have Vises, and I like collecting sets, so small to large. And then obviously here we've got some unique Vises. Some of you may know what this is. This is a Wilton bullet Vise, kind of a cool Vise. And then we have miniature lathes. So these were usually watchmakers and small parts makers. These are real tools, and they're about 12 inches wide. Kind of cool.
Now, what are the dates for some of those Vises that you showed?
These ones are around the 1920s. This one's from the 40s. They all vary, but they're not so early, generally 20th century. These are some of the rare early backhoe, which I showed you earlier, the very first type of tool there was. And these are really cool 1920s aluminium screwdrivers from backhoe, and some of their earlier tools. So you have the double-ended Crescent wrenches and the different size fishtail wrenches or shark wrenches. And then obviously the different sizes, smallish to large. What I tried to accomplish was these items are extremely sought after, and I've bought them from around the world, from New Zealand, Australia, Europe, England, everywhere. And I tried to accomplish, if you walked into a hardware store, what it would have looked like, where they would be double or triple stacked, if you know what I mean. So if it sort of gives it the look like possibly it was a shop.
That's fantastic. Now, I'm not familiar. Katie obviously was, but I am not familiar with the backhoe name. Is that a British company? Is it an American company?
No, it's a Swedish company.
Oh, Swedish. Okay.
And it's basically their only tool brand virtually. I mean, in the US, you probably have a couple of hundred manufacturers of way more than that, but like serious manufacturers, so many. In Sweden, they just have backhoe. It's like their national tool, if you know what I mean. And obviously more miniature Vises, different planes. I showed you this one earlier, and some of these were made by my good friend Graham, who made this, and he made this one for me, and he actually put my name on it. I'll cover my name, but it says Manchester, where I'm from, and he made this and posted it for me, and he's dovetailed all the brass. I think he did a beautiful job.
That's amazing.
Like, this is kind of a cool item. This is a Stanley #1, so it's the smallest plane Stanley ever made, and this, all parts are from 1871 to 1873, all parts correct, and these were not very practical because they're very small. So they didn't make too many of them, and then usually they were so thin they drop, they break. So to find one from 1870s, basically the earliest one, this is a Type 3. The earliest type was only 18 months earlier. So it's one of the first ever planes made by Stanley, and it's exceedingly good condition considering still got some of the original lacquer.
I know those are very sought after by collectors. That is the piece.
They're so sought after that people copy them. This is a Lee Nielsen, which is a copy of a Stanley #1, and they were sold for a couple of $100, and now they reach maybe $700 or $800 because people can't find those. They kind of go to those. So this is a wrench display which I got from Denmark from the 1930s, and I just think it's a great design where it holds and displays the wrenches. This would have been for a shop.
Now, did you actually travel to Denmark to purchase that piece?
No, I certainly didn't. I bought it in lockdown, so it was through the post office. And recently, I acquired 2 more because I like them so much. This is kind of a good design. This was given by the factory to its regular. It's like a paperweight, and you put a candle inside, and it's modelled on a blower for a forge. And it's around turn of the century, and then obviously we got a really cool Baco tin sign from the factory, and this plaque actually came from the factory. It was on the factory front gates, from the guy who I bought it from. His dad works at the factory.
That's fantastic.
More tools up here, and then I have a small collection of miniature anvils. Some of them are like salesman samples. You would get, malleable iron, and others are real jeweler's anvils. And this one's kind of fun. This is an anvil where in England, if you wanted to get married, you had to wait till you were 18. But in Scotland, you could get married at 16. So the closest place over the border is called Gretna Green, and they have a big anvil in the centre of the town. And all the young couples would run off to Scotland to take advantage of the law so they could get married earlier than they could in England. And they used to buy these little anvils as souvenirs when they got married. So they're quite common, but they're kind of cool, if you know what I mean.
Those are amazing, and that is very fascinating.
Yeah, so we have, it certainly is. We have a really cool display here. This is a Vise stand, and obviously these are quite sought after because they were thrown away once they stopped selling that Vise. So they didn't survive, unlike the actual Vises themselves, which is kind of cool. I mean, you guys know that quite often the memorabilia makes more money than the actual tools themselves.
I love the store displays because, like you mentioned, a lot of them were thrown away or they weren't used after a certain time, or hardware stores closed, so they would just get rid of them. And the fact that people like us want to actually save them and put them in our collections for the advertising and the craftsmanship and the beautiful display, I think is really cool. I love those so much.
So this is kind of funky. You do see a lot of drill indexes, but this is an auger bit index, and you don't find those very often.
No.
And then behind it is a Record Tools, which is a British company, advertising dog, and this is another advertising dog, and this company is called King Dick, and it makes wrenches amongst other things. And this is a very sought after piece amongst wrench collectors and tool collectors. There's only a couple known examples of this. And actually today, funny enough, I bought this model saw advertising piece. It's about 5 foot long. And and it's Spear and Jackson, Sheffield, and this is an advertising piece made out of aluminium.
That is absolutely gorgeous.
Kind of a clever design, you know, advertising piece, but not many of these survive because they're kind of unwieldy, so they got thrown away.
And I can imagine that they're sharp.
No, this is not for cutting. It's got no proper teeth.
Right.
But it's a shop display showing the quality. This is another shop display, but for Crescent tools, for their wrenches. Great graphics and great colors, don't you think?
I love the colors of that Crescent display. That's something, folks, we have here in the States, and I'm actually on the hunt for one of those for my own collection.
They're quite easy to find because they're from, I think, the 50s, 60s, and they are around. You can find them. And this is what I usually do with my tools, is I usually create little pictures and displays, take little pictures and post them on Instagram. This is the last one I did.
What's that piece in the upper right-hand corner? It almost looks like a car mascot. What is that?
It is. It's a car mascot off a car.
Well, I guess that's why it looks like a car mascot. Okay.
You're quite right. You've got a very perceptive. You know your stuff. So that's a quick view of my sort of display wall. And now, shall I show you in a few drawers if we have time?
Sure. And then it's just a winter. Beautiful, not winter, but just a wonderland. Like so much
wonderland of junk.
Yes.
So I have lots of drawers, small ones and big ones. I mean, this one might be familiar to you. You collect tapes, don't you?
I do.
And
look at those.
We've had a look at some of my padlocks. There's multiple drawers of those. We've been in the Plumb Bob drawer, and obviously pen knives and other random bits of items. It's kind of good to have a drawer of everything, then you just chuck it in the drawer. These are kind of funky. These are tin openers, but cows' heads. And
what an interesting little collection.
Brushes, of all things, but they look great in pictures for some reason. Don't know why, but I just like the brushes. That's Deborah's fault for that one. Scissors, and all sorts of other binoculars. What's in here? And oilers. So random items in there. And we have some more oilers just here which don't fit in the drawer.
I love those. Now those would be considered handy oilers?
The what? Yeah, handy oilers. And then obviously more different tools and stuff. These is one of my favorite drawers. Wow. I really like
gorgeous.
Levels. They made them out of nice materials and different shapes. So levels and protractors. These ones are from the US. These are Stanley levels. So they're kind of funky designs.
Now, do you have any? This is something I've stumbled across, and I'm not 100% sure their specifics of their existence. Do you have any levels that are specifically for grandfather clocks?
You get them, and they're usually like this. And the grandfather clock, and they're adjustable, because obviously you would need to adjust it to work out, the height. So you'd have a screw on one side, and sometimes they're actually built into the grandfather clock itself as part of the mechanism. So when you're setting it up, you can set up the clock straight. You know what I mean?
Okay.
They're adjustable. These ones are engineers levels and carpentry levels, but similar.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
So here's some of my miniature tools. So we have miniature wrenches. These are like 3 inches and 4 inches. Some of them in the boxes. If they're in the boxes, it's more interesting to me because I like the advertising.
And do they hold more value, I'm assuming, in the boxes?
And this is my friend who made the plane, made me these plaques the other day for my pictures, which was really kind of him. I'll show you some more. So here's some wrenches I decided to polish like you do when you've got no time. So I did all these in a month, and I just polished them all. I don't know why. I can't explain it, but I did. Here's my vintage screwdriver.
I love the wooden handled screwdrivers.
These are kind of good. These are perfect handle, HD Smith. They open out, so you can get more leverage. I just love the unusual, old, prehistoric look to some of the screwdrivers. They're kind of cool. This one's kind of clever. This is a HD Smith, and you can screw from 2 different sides. So if something's in, you can adjust it, then turn it, and then adjust it. So it gives you more options. Kind of a clever design, don't you think, for very narrow access down the side of a cupboard?
Very, very clever. And what date would that have been from?
Well, H.G. Smith went bankrupt in the financial crisis of the 30s. So they made their tools extremely high quality. So that they were quite expensive. And when the financial Great Depression came, they went out of business. So from sort of like the 1890s to 1930, maybe that kind of range. And here we have another one. These are pliers, different shapes. These are kind of interesting. Do you know what these are for?
That is something I've never seen.
No clue.
They're called Hargreaves Pliers, and they're for setting rings inside pigs and cows and cattle's noses, for crushing the ring so you could move the animal without risk to, without, serious risk. Lots of different types of pliers, like these are Pacific, these are Red Devil, great American.
Oh, I love Red Devil.
Yeah, I love the different scrapers, and they do. These are glazing pliers for breaking the glass. Lots of different types of pliers. And one of my favorite drawers is multi-tools. So tools what have multiple purposes. The more purposes, the better. Like, for instance, these secateurs are kind of cool. These are, any idea what these are for?
It looks like they're
Tree trimming?
They're specifically for vineyards, for pruning the vines. So this is for cutting the vine.
I wasn't too far.
Yeah, so they're French.
Now, just to reiterate, none of this existed 2 years ago.
No.
You've built this entire collection in less than 2 years.
Don't judge me, please.
I'm not judging. I hold you in the highest esteem. I am absolutely in awe.
Yeah, me too.
Please don't. And it's all documented on YouTube. So I've made maybe 500 videos of buying every single item. This is kind of an interesting drawer. These are rules, different engineers' rules. These are made out of ivory. And what you found with ivory was that the very finest men were put on the ivory. They started off on the softwood. They went to hardwood like boxwood, and only the time-served men, maybe 20 years service, would be allowed to touch the ivory for obvious reasons. Obviously, I don't condone ivory hunting. It's appalling. But you can't deny the workmanship. This was all handwritten in, hand engraved. There was no machines to do this. It's kind of exceptional, don't you think?
Very. I mean, the detail to me that people's spent, the detail and the time people took to actually put into these tools is really amazing to me. We don't have anything like that now, and our packaging and our design really pales in comparison to some of the stuff that you could get in the earlier days.
Certainly. I mean, just look, every single item's handwritten, hand engraved, German silver and ivory. I mean, the material is terrible, but the workmanship is quite something. Here is some of my other items, but these are in their original boxes. So they're NOS, my 3 favorite initials.
We all love new old stock.
Obviously, more wrenches. We've certainly done that. Here's more NOS. These are specifically interesting. These are from the 1920s, and these are the jaws for the wrenches on the walls. And even here we have everything was replaceable back in the day. So everything, you could order a new part. Now you just chuck it away and get another one.
Yeah.
Kind of a different society then. Everything you could just replace. And I just think that's kind of cool.
I think that's amazing. Well, Ben, this has been such a lovely episode, and I am so grateful that you were able to take the time and share with us today, because I learned so much. You had so many interesting things to share, great eye candy, and I mean, this is just an incredible collection.
Well, it's certainly a lot of items. There's certainly not enough time for any video. I think if we've stretched the patience of certainly, every human on the planet. But yeah, certainly it's been my
Every
pleasure.
door you pull open, it's like a whole nother discovery. So it keeps everyone super interested because there's just so much to see. So
And
we'll
they're
have
all
to-
like pre-little created flat lays.
yes.
Well, it's just lots of junk. But before we go, I must show you this. This is my H.D. Smith collection from the US. And the perfect handle they were known for because of the timber handle. And there's many collectors in the US who have been collecting for 20 years plus who don't have a collection this good. It's quite extensive. But the reason why I have such a collection in the UK is because I bought somebody's whole collection and I had it shipped. The parcel weighed 78 pounds.
Wow.
And it was enforced with ply. And the Americans always say to me, how did you get this? How did you get, we can't find these H.D. Smith 660 screwdrivers. And I've got a full set because a lovely chap spent 20 years picking these up and let me have the whole collection.
Which is just
That's
incredible.
amazing.
It's great
So-
to find other collectors and be able to have their collections and treasure them as much as they did.
Certainly. So shall we go back to the start?
Absolutely.
Wonderful. I will go back to the start.
All right, folks, one moment. Well, guys, this has been quite the episode, full of eye candy and amazing information. Ben is just excellent, and I am so glad that he was able to come on and share with us. He's coming all the way from England, in Manchester, to be more specific. So it's amazing we were able to record this episode and share it with all of you on YouTube. So please make sure that you're following Ben over on Instagram at The Tool Addict and on YouTube. I'll link all of his accounts down below because he is just absolutely incredible. And Patrick, thank you so much for joining us today. I'm really
Oh,
looking
absolutely.
forward
This was
to
quite
our
a
next
joy.
time.
Made notes of what my next collections may need to be.
I think I want to start a collection of padlocks. Those are amazing. Wow, Ben.
Yeah, certainly are. And it only took me 2 weeks or one swap. So easy collection.
Well, fantastic. Ben, thank you again so much for your time and sharing all of your knowledge with us today. And we really appreciate you having on.
My pleasure.
All righty, guys. Well, that's going to do it for this Duo Dive episode. We will have another one coming to you next week, so stay tuned for that. Always on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. Eastern. And as always, folks, I hope that you will stay in, stay safe, and pinch YouTube. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.